Here we go.
Shalom Aleichem Yiddelach. How are you?
Okay.
How are you, Rabbi? How was your day?
Alechem shalom. Alechem shalom.
Good. Sasson, how are you?
How was your day, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Chazdei Hashem.
Chazdei Hashem lo tamu.
Jack, how are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Shkoyach everyone for joining us tonight. If you have a chumash, actually, it would be a little easier, even though I sent out Mara Makamas. We're going to do a classic Rashi sicha about the posuk Marash Aránu, but really it's about how the Jews rock. Kipshutoy. Literally. As you know, the Rebbe had his approach and methodology of how to take apart a Rashi, and that that Rashi wasn't just a collection of little midrashim here or there. Rashi had a way of learning Pshuta Shel Mikra, a little different than the Ibn Ezra, a little different than other Pashtonim. Rashi had a certain style of learning Pshuta Shel Mikra. There was a story that the Rebbe said once about the Heilige Yerushalayim. When Rabbi Yisrael was a little child, before he was called the Heilige Yerushalayim, he was called, he had a name, right? Srolik, right? When his mother told him to take the garbage out of the house, she didn't say, Heilige Yerushalayim, and take him and do. She said, Srolik, take out the garbage. So the Heilige Yerushalayim was a little boy, he was called Srolik, and he was in Yechaider, and the teacher was saying, Rashi after Rashi, and right before the Rashi, he would always pick up a hand, and he was exactly on target. He would ask whatever bothered Rashi. Rashi never says his question, but the Rashi is always coming to address the question that the Pshuta Shemikra that a 5-year-old might ask, a Chomesh Lamikra might ask. Rashi doesn't ask his question, but he's answering the question that you would have. And always when they learned the posuk, when they finished the posuk before they can get to Rashi, the little boy would pick up his hand. Yisrulek would say, Rebbe, Chobakasha. And it would be exactly the kasha that Rashi is coming to answer. And when they got to the story of the dream of Yaakov and Malachim, Oilam V'Yordim, and there's a quite obvious question, the Malachim, what do you mean Oilam? How are Malachim going up and then coming down? Don't angels come from heaven? It should be the other way around. Angels should be coming down and then going up. So Rashi answers the question. Rashi says, again, Rashi doesn't ask the question, but he answers. He says that there were malachim going with an Eretz Yisrael accompanying Yaakov Avinu. Now that he's going up to Chutz La'aretz Oilim, they left, they went back up to the sky, and the new malachim, the Chutz La'aretz malachim, are Yordim. But the Malamed was astounded that the little boy is sitting, Yisruluk is sitting, Mishkan Kasha, no question. So he said, Sruluk, you have no question. Epis and nicht schwer in the posuk. So the boy said, what's the kasha? Af kein chulam frekt man ish kein kasha. You didn't ask no question about a dream. It's a dream. Angels are coming. Angels are going. So Rashi has and the Rebbe developed an unbelievable amount of clarity in the methodology that Rashi has to every single posuk. There's loy chosev v'layater. There isn't an extra word. There isn't an extra syllable. But Rashi quotes the 2 words from the posuk. That means those are the words that are the problematic words. That's where the question is. If Rashi doesn't ask the question, doesn't answer, it means that he thinks that it's simple and he already answered it in the previous posuk, or the story itself gives the answer. And Rashi writes in the beginning of Bereshis, "Ani lo yivasi elo l'pshuta shel mikra ve'agoda hamiyasheves divrei hamikra." That I only say Pshuta Shel Mikra, but sometimes the Yishuv, the posuk doesn't sit well unless you bring a Haggadah. So I will bring a Haggadah, a Medrash, which is going to sweeten the Pshat of the posuk. So when we get to the story of Bullock, and there's a lot of juicy Rashis, and there's a lot of Rashi and a lot of Chazal, but you expect Rashi to be first what Rashi was called by the Gedolei Yisrael was called Parshan Dosa. A play on words was Parshan Dosa, one of the names of the sons in the Megillah. Parshan Dosa, that he was Mefarish of Pshat. So in the Bullock has 4 times the Bilam where he tries to gives the opposite of a blessing to the Jews and ends up turning into a blessing. And in the first round, he starts off speaking, and he says, Ki meirosh tzurim areinu umigvos ashurenu. So, what does that mean? So all the Pashtonim, all the Ibn Ezra, the Rashbam, the Ramban, the Ralbag, they say simply, Ki meirosh tzurim areinu. Tzurim is a rock. Vos is a mountain. I'm standing on a high mountain, and I'm looking down at the camp of the Jews. And that's the simple pshat. I'm seeing them on top of a tzur, on top of a rock, on top of nigvos, on top of a mountain. There was a mountain top, and on top of that there was a pile of rocks. And he was standing on a pile of rocks. He was looking down, and he saw the huge Rova Yisrael. He saw the camp of the Jewish people with the four camps, the golem, and the Mishkan in between. But Rashi says no. What does Rashi say? What is the pshat? Ki meirosh tzurim areinu ani mistakel b'reishisom ubetchilu shorasheim. I look at the beginning and the start of their roots, and I see that the Jews are in a foundation that are chazokim, that are strong. They're musadim, they're fundamental. They have a strong foundation. The chazokim, and they're very strong. Kitzurim megvos, like the rocks in the mountains. Al yidei, through Avos v'Imos, the fathers and the mothers. Why does it actually? Why can't Rashi say pshat? Pshat. Just like all the. And why does he say a medrash? And the truth is, if you look in the medrash, and the medrash is in Bamidbar, Rabba, and in the Tanchuma, and the Chimona. But just for an example, you have the Chimona, which I sent in the Manamakoimos. So look at the third line, second line actually. You give a marshal that there was a Rashi that said, "Why am I going to go cut every branch? Let me go to the source. Let me go to the source of the tree and try to cut it out from the roots." And when he started to dig at the roots, he realized that you can't really dig out the Jews. There's 12 tribes, there are 12 branches, but if you go to the roots, it's very hard to try to chop into the roots. And he says, and a few lines later, which I underlined, why was he called Abram Tzur? And the posuk continues to Avram and to Sarah. So the Eibishter says to the Yidden, look at the rock where I carved you out from, which is Avram and Sarah. Well, Yisrael also called it Tzurim. So why is it that the Medrash finds it important to bring a proof in the posuk that the Avos and the Mos are called Tzurim, are called rocks? And Rashi, who's supposed to be Pshuta Shel Mikra, doesn't even find it necessary to bring a raya from a posuk. He doesn't even find it necessary to bring a raya from the posuk. You can't say, there's some Meforshim that want to answer, the Meforshim that say that if you can say the Pshat, Kimirosh Sura means they went up on the top of a mountain, they stood on top of a rock. It's Vasan Nageya. What's he stood on a rock? He stood on a milk crate. He stood on a cardboard box. What's Nageya? The Torah has to say something that's important. Why does the Torah say Kimirosh Sura that he was standing on a mountain? What's the difference? He was standing in a valley, standing on a mountain, standing on a rock, standing in a box. But the emphasis, that's not true. It's very negeya. It's very important. In fact, it really makes everything flow. It actually makes everything flow. If you look at in the beginning when the Bullock and Bilam meet, so Bullock and Bilam meet, and then they go out vayaleu right before the Chav Gimel, Parsha Chav Gimel, in the last pasuk in Chav Beis, pasuk Memalam, right when they meet, Bullock and Bilam. By Boiker, vayikach Bullock as Bilam, vayaleu bomas Baal. He took him out for a trip, and he took him to the place called Bomas Baal, which is sort of an elevated place. He saw a little bit of the nation. He saw a little bit of the people. Then, finally, so Bilam says the Bullock built 7 mizbechos, make 7 porim, 7 elim as sacrifices, and then he walks a little to the side, and he thinks he'll, and then the Eibishter reveals himself to Bilam, and the Eibishter says to him, "Listen, I'm going to tell you exactly what to say. You go back and start speaking." And he comes back. And he's and then he starts saying the first one of the 4 blessings. After he finishes, so Bullock is angry. He says, so Bullock said, "You know what? We'll go to a different place. You'll see a little bit. And you won't see everyone. And you can curse them from there." So the Ramban says that what happened was like this. First, they went to a mountain where they couldn't see the entire people. But then, when Bullock started to build the Mizbeach and Bilam took a walk, Vayelach Shefi, he walked all the way to the top of the mountain. And from the top of the mountain, he was able to see all of Klal Yisrael. And that's what he said. I see them from the top. I walk to the top of the mountain, and I see that they're a nation that sits alone, not like other nations that there's a cholent and there's a mix. The Jews sit alone. I see the 4 camps. The Jews are alone. Well, by goyim they don't get mixed in with the goyim. So then it could be Bullock says, "You know what? Let me take you to a different place. I don't want you to look at the entire nation." Now the Ramban doesn't explain why. Why would it help? I mean, you look in Pshat. He said after the first failure, the giving the opposite of a blessing, Bullock says, "You know what? Let's take you in a different place." Let's go in a different place. Why does he want to take him to a different place? And you won't see everyone. You'll only see kotzei. So the Rebbe has a bir nifla for this. The Rebbe says if you look in Parshas Baloischa, where it says that there was a that misoinim Rabbi Oz Hashem, and there was b'ktzei hamachana. So Rashi says in the first pshat, b'muktzin shebahem eidev ra. Ktzei is the bad people that are sitting over there in the ktzei. So Bullock realized that when Bilam walked up to the top of the mountain and he saw all the Yidden, including the tzaddikim, there was no room for the opposite of a blessing to be chal. He was inspired to give a blessing. So he said, "You know, let me take you somewhere else. I don't want you walking to the top of the mountain looking at all. I just want you to see Efes Kotseyu. Only the Muktzin Shebahem, the bad guys, the Erev Rav, and maybe you'll be inspired to curse them then." And going back to the Ramban and going back to Pshat, so that's why the posuk has to say, "Hey Morosh Tzurim Arenu Megvos Ashurenu." L'chayda, in the beginning, he says that when they meet Bullock and Bilam, they went to Bomas Ball and they saw Ktseyon, only a little bit of the people. Then he says, no, let's go to a different place. I want you to see only a little bit of the people. But you said in the beginning they only saw a little bit of the people. Therefore, the posuk has to say no. That in between, he had walked up on his own volition to the top of the mountain, and he stood on top of the rocks, and he saw the entire nation. And Bullock got upset about that. Bullock said, "No, don't look at the entire nation. That inspires you to give blessings. You know, let's go to a different place. Let's not go to Bama's Ball. You're going to walk to the top of the mountain. You're going to see Kulo. You're going to see them all. You'll be inspired to bless them. I want to take you to Smakam Acher, Shetirim Sham Efes Kotseyotira V'chula Loisira." So, but the Torah has to tell you, how did they see all the people? In the beginning, you said that they only saw Kitsei Ha'am. Therefore, the pasuk says, he walked up to the top of the mountain and he stood on the rocks. And therefore, he was inspired to give the brach. So in Pshat, it would flow very well. And as we said, indeed, the Ramban and the Rashbam and the Ralbag and even Ezra, they all say, Merash Aránu means that Pshat, that Bilam stood on top of a mountain, on top of a rock, which was a very high place, and he looked down at the entire camp of Klal Yisrael. And that's what he's saying. I see him from the top of the rock. I can look at them from the top of the mountain. So Rashi, why couldn't Rashi learn Pshat? Why couldn't Rashi learn like all the Mefarshim who learned the Pshat? And not only does he bring a Medrash, the Medrash brings a proof to his raya. He brings a psukim to prove that Avram and Sarah are called tzurim. And Rashi doesn't even bother to bring a posuk. And Rashi even changes. The Medrash says that the tzurim and the is elu ovis, and the Gemara is elu imaz. And Rashi says ayidea ovis v'imaz, which is a little different thing. And Rashi saying, the Medrash says that the rocks are the ovis. Rashi is saying not that the rocks are the ovis. The Jews are the rocks. The beginning of the rocks are the ovis. Ani mistakel b'rei shisam or b'techilas shor Hashem. V'ani roi oisim yisodim. The Jews are strong. Kitzurim ugvos. They are like rock. The Jews rock. Not that the ovis are rocks. The Jews are rocks. How are they rocks? Al yidei ovis v'imos, Rashi says. So he's not even saying what the Medrash is saying. So what's going on over here? So the Rebbe says the biur is poshet. Poshet and brilliant. Poshet and brilliant. It says that he comes back. Bilam comes back. Vayoshev Elov. He comes back to Bullock. Vayisa Misholoi. And he started saying a marshal. So let's read what he's saying and we'll find where's the marshal. What's a marshal? Like in the next 3 times when he talks, he says, Vayisa Misholoi. He says the Jews are ketoya pasre'im. They have these unbelievable strong horns. Kelovi ka'adia, like a lion and a lioness. Kinacholam keganis, they're like rivers and they're like gardens. Dorach koychev, they're like stars. Obviously, these are misholim. It's a parable. Jews are human beings. They're not lions. They're not lioness. They're not rivers. They're not gardens. They're not stars. These are misholim to the attributes of the Jewish people. So here also there's a marshal. So let's read the words posuk by posuk and see where is the marshal here. And the first time when he blesses the Jews, what's the marshal? He says, he brought me from the land of Aram. That's not a marshal. That's where Bilam lived, not Aram. He says, go give the opposite of blessing to the Jews. That's not a marshal. That's exactly what happened. Then he says, I can't curse. God didn't curse. Hashem is, and the explanation of Rashi, what's the double thing? But again, there's not a marshal here. He's saying, I can't curse them. I cannot find a crack here. Rashi says that he knows the moments and Hashem is bekas. He couldn't, the Eibishter was not bekas. He couldn't do anything. It's not a marshal. This is the way it is. Then he says, so if we should say this is not a marshal, again, he was standing on a rock, standing in a marshal, there's no marshal here. This is a nation that rests alone. They don't mix with the goyim. Not a marshal, that's the way it is. Who can count the dust of Yaakov? Oh, you say, now this is a marshal. And indeed, that's what Mefarshim say, that this was a marshal, like the Eibishter said to Avram Aviv, that just like a man can't count the sand, the dust, a man cannot count how many Jews there will be. That would be nice if Rashi thought that was a pshat in the pasuk, but that's not what Rashi says. Rashi says, "Mimona afer Yaakov ketarguma dadekaya the beis Yaakov." Dadekaya beis Yaakov, the little children. It's not a marshal. He said, "Who can count?" There's a lot of Jewish children. Children, the kinui for children is offered. Why is that the kinui for children? Many reasons. It's oifer ayolim, which means youth. Or it could be just like children are little, just like dust is small, but there's no marshal here. That's why children are called offer. Where's the marshal here? There's no nimshal here. When you have a marshal and you have a nimshal, there's no nimshal. children are called Afar Adkaya, the Beis Yaakov. And the second shot Rashi says is Afar Yaakov. Ein b'cheshbon b'mitzvah shemekayim b'Afar. There's mitzvahs that the Jews do with sand. There's a lot of mitzvahs that do with sand. There's mitzvahs that the Jews do with sand. It's not a marshal. That's the way it is. There's a lot of mitzvahs that the Jews do with sand. It's not a marshal. It's an imshal. It is what it is. And continue. The posuk says, "Umisper es roive Yisrael," that who can count the zera from the Yidden? Again, it's not a marshal. That's the way it is. And then he says, "Thomas nafshi Moshe shorim v'tiach nisi kamoyu," that he would like that the Yidden is called that when the Yidden pass away, it's a beautiful departure. The petita of tzaddikim, and he longs to be that, have such a. Hey, that wasn't the way he died at the end, but he longed to have such a death. Again, that's not a marshal. What's the marshal? So where's the marshal here? Where is the marshal? Rashi says, I can only say that there's one paragraph here that's the marshal. This is the marshal. The marshal is that the strength of the Jew is like a rock. That's the marshal. The strength of a Jew is like a rock. There's a marshal here. There's a marshal here. That the strength of the Jew is like a rock. We're not talking about the ovis. That the ovis are called rocks, and there's psukim for it. There's a kinui. It's a shema kinui for the ovis. No. We're saying that the Jews are like rocks. They're strong like rocks. Just like rocks are strong. Gashmizdika rocks are strong. Mountains, you can't move mountains. You can't chop rocks. So the Yidden are strong. And the Reoisam is Sodom Chazak and Gitzurim. That's the marshal. The marshal is rocks and mountains are very strong. You can't crack them. And the nimshal is the Jews are very strong people. You can't break them. That's a marshal and a nimshal. And that's what Rashi says. Because there has to be a marshal and a nimshal. The marshal is that there is rocks. And the nimshal is the Jews, just like rocks are strong. The Jews rock. The Jews rock. Because they're very strong, but there's a marshal and a nimshal. Just going off a little bit on a tangent, the Rebbe says that later also, at the end of Nevuas Bilam, it says, Reish is going on Molek, Rashi says, who kodem leilochem Yisrael, v'chein targum unkelos v'chirisa liyavet biyoda. So over there also, there are mefarshim that say a pshat, which is pshat, not a marshal. But again, Rashi holds there has to be a marshal here. V'yisa mishaloi, there's a marshal. So therefore, she says that there's a marshal. What's the marshal? Reish is going on Molek. There's a marshal and a nimshal. There's a marshal and a nimshal here. He called them kulam leilochem. Reishis means that they were at first to be loichem, and then the Eden will have the final say on it. Back to our posuk in Marash Sunim Arenum Legvos Ashurenum. The Rebbe says that we see an unbelievable geschmack in a kuda here. Usually, when you have a marshal, why do you give a marshal? If you can understand it without a marshal, you wouldn't give a marshal. If something is very deep, say, let me give you a marshal. Let me give you a marshal. There was once a father and a son. Why are you giving me a marshal? Because you can't explain it to me. I don't understand. So you're going to tell me a story, which is a simple story that I could understand. And from the story, I will stand the depth of the point of the nimshal that you want to make. That's the inyan of giving a marshal. That's the inyan of giving a marshal. So the Rebbe says is a moed that you could say a geschmacka thing here. A goy can't estimate the strength of a Jew. A bilam doesn't understand the strength. He gives a marshal. There's a marshal that he gives. What's the marshal? The marshal he gives, he understands a rock. A rock is very strong. A mountain is very strong. So it's a marshal. Just like a goy understands a rock is strong. The goy versteht a rock. You can't take your hands and crumble a rock. You can't move a mountain. So in the same vein, you can't break a yid. But it's only a marshal. Because the emphasis, a goy doesn't begin to understand the strength of a yid. Doesn't understand the goy is a yadayim yadei Esav. He doesn't understand the power of a koil Yaakov. The goy doesn't begin to understand. He's giving a marshal here. He doesn't begin to understand the koyak of a yid. By a goy, koyak means koychi be'oitzim yodei, the power of the goof, the power of the hand. Yadayim b'dei Yisrael. For the Jew, the koyak of the Jew is hakol koyak. The koyak is the neshama, spirituality, mesidus nefesh. That's the power of a Jew. Tzemach Tzedek says Noida Toida. Rosh Tzuri means the neshama, the highest level of the neshama, the part of the neshama which is muchen limser nafshe al kiddush Hashem bali shum tamadas. V'lechein niker rosh tzurim shu bechinas chazaka me'oid kilu dava she'efsher klal lichper b'Hashem echad. That the power of mesidus nefesh, the eson sheb neshama, the eson sheb neshama, the tzur sheb, there's a rock in the neshama that you can't shake it up. So, a goy doesn't goy in the land of a goy, in goy land, in Goysville. What is toygift? Toygift is the opposite of mesidus nefesh. For toygift means that I'm here, that I'm strong, that I'm stubborn, that I'm big, that I'm Yeshus. My being, my presence, and to a goy, toygift means that I get my way, that I always get my way. I always have the upper hand. That's toygift to a goy. To a yid, toygift is exactly the opposite. What's toygift? What's toygift? What's eson sheben neshama? What's the tzur sheben neshama? The koyak mesidus nefesh. The opposite. The koyak that a yid has, he's so devoted to the Eibishter that he's muchen to die al kiddush Hashem. A guy doesn't understand it. A nivra, every nivra, the whole idea of a nivra is he wants to exist. He wants to exist, not to stop it, to cease to exist. This thing that a yid is muchen to be moise nafshe al kiddush Hashem is a godly thing that's in the yid. That's why it's bagoyim lo yischashem. That's like marash tzunim aránu. Hein od lavodav yishkum bagoyim lo yischashem. This is something that the goyim don't have such a thing. That they don't know of such a thing. That's why he gives a marshal. Just like a rock is strong, just like a mountain is strong, the Yidden are strong. But he can't quantify the strength of a Yid. Because the Yidden, the strength of a Yid is something that a Goy cannot understand. He can't explain it. You can't quantify it. The koyak of a Yid is mesidus nefesh. The koyak of a Yid is not a gashmisdik koyak, it's a ruchnisdik koyak. Gashmisdik koyak over time gets weaker. Say it's not the children are similar to the parents, not exactly. The parents are strong, the child might also be strong. It might be stronger, might be weaker. It's not a foregone conclusion that the son, if both parents are very strong, that the son is going to be strong. The choyzik that comes from the avos and the imos is something which doesn't change. It's lo shanisi. It's eternal, and it's by all the Yidden. It's taka al yidea avos. It came as a yerusha through the avos and the imos, but it's a godly thing that it's by every single Yid. Every Yid is as strong as a rock. And this is the marshal. This is the marshal that Bilam is giving about the Yidden. So again, to summarize this Rashi sicha in a nutshell, that in the first round of brachas that Bilam gives to the Yidden, Rashi says there was a vayisa misholi, there was a marshal. What could be a marshal? Everything is not a marshal. There's no marshal there. Therefore, Rashi says, this is the marshal. Not that like in Pshat, that he stood on top of the mountain, he stood on top of a rock. But he said, I see that the Jews are as strong as a mountain. They're as strong as a rock. You can't crumble a rock and you can't move a mountain. The Jews, you can't move them and you can't break them. You can't crumble them. But it's only a marshal. A goy doesn't really understand the strength of the Yid. He can never comprehend the strength of the Yid. To a goy, strength is in the arm, is in the fist. Loi beruchi, loi bechayel, loi bekoyak, kim beruchi am Hashem. By the Eibishter, it's not the strength is not b'chayil, not b'koyach. And by Yid, strength is not b'chayil, not b'koyach. It's b'goyim lo yischashem. The goyim can't understand it. But he gives a marshal for it that the goyim should, the efes kotzeyu should understand what it is. He calls the Jews tzurim megvos, mountains and rocks. Any questions on the sicha?
I just had a question, Rabbi, just a general question. Why do we need, as a Jewish people, why did Torah deem it necessary that we should have a beracha from a goy, Rasha, like that?
A good question. It's a good question. I guess. In Pshat, when do you know when your biggest adversary is impressed by you, so you know that it's impressive. When the biggest Soni Yisrael has to admit that Matov Walach Yaakov Mishkanesach Yisrael, you know that it's really Matov Walach Yaakov Mishkanesach Yisrael. I'm talking about Pshat. I mean, obviously we have, we waited for Yisroi, which was the biggest Avodah Zorah, to turn around, understand the Achdus Hashem. Same thing here. A person who is who's such a nasty person like Bilam, to turn around and to give a bracha to the Yidden, that's the ultimate of ishapcha, of turning things around, turning the darkness into light.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Bilam was a Navi like Moshe Rabbeinu. He was equal to Moshe Rabbeinu. Just
Yeah.
he took the whole Nevuah thing, he took it to the bad side.
Right.
The opposite of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right. Yep. That's it. The Abisha said that the guy won't be able to have a complaint. They'll say, "Oh, you didn't give us a prophet." Like Moshe, I gave you a prophet. Look what he did. He did the opposite of Moshe. Picked up the Yidden, and Bilam Marosha, he dragged down the goyim. I have a schus that a couple that is connected to Beis Menachem Mendel is going out in Shlichus HaMitzvah very soon to Texas, to Houston, Texas. Shmuli and Mindy Zeitlan are going out in Mitzvah Shlichus very soon. So I'd like to share a story that actually we've seen it on the Gem video, but I actually I read it this morning in the magazine, Ba'orach Sidis, volume 30. A story that the head shliach in Texas, shliach in Houston, Texas, the people that are davening in our shul that started their way into Torah mitzvahs through Rabbi Lazarov. So a story that he said that the first year he was on shlichus, talking about 40 years ago, in Houston, Texas, and there was a pediatrician. The family was using a certain pediatrician, and then after being in shlichus for about a year, there was the kids needed to go to the pediatrician, and they call up and they said the doctor's out on vacation. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. A little bit of a strange long vacation. After 5 weeks, the doctor's back from the vacation. Okay, so the family goes to the doctor for a visit. The doctor speaks to Rabbi Lazarov, and he says he'd like to tell him something confidential. He said he was really not on vacation at all. Chimona was in the hospital for 5 weeks, and that he lost total mobility in one of his hands, and there seems to be no solution for his problem, and it seems to be only a question of time until this Chimona will take over his entire body, and he'll be Chimona he'll be totally not mobile. And the doctor started to cry. So Rabbi Lazarov said that he suggested to the doctor that he should write a letter to the Rebbe. Okay, so the doctor agreed. He wrote a letter to the Rebbe. And Rabbi Lazarov sent it immediately. And the next day he gets a call from the doctor's office. And the doctor wanted to speak to him, but he didn't get an answer yet. So he's avoiding the doctor. This is a day, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Terribly uncomfortable. He doesn't want to go to the doctor's office. His wife takes the kids to the doctor now. He doesn't want to answer any phone calls. He doesn't know what to do. He gets a call one morning. It was Rabbi Klein. Rabbi Klein had said that last night, it was a little before 1 o'clock in the morning at the end of Yechidus, and the Rebbe called him in, and the Rebbe said that he should give an answer to Rabbi Lazarov for the request of this Dr. Narkin. 3 points. Number one, the Rebbe said, Bracha l'refuah shlema v'yavasa toif. He has a bracha for speedy recovery, and he should give good news. Number two, Yidrish b'shloimeh b'shmi, that he should give regards to the doctor in the Rebbe's name, personal regards. Number three, Yivdek atfilin, he should check his tefillin. So he called the doctor, and immediately the doctor is ecstatic. He says, Rabbi, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it. He says, last night at 10 minutes to 1 o'clock, all of a sudden, I felt something happened in my hand. Something happened in my hand, and I'm regaining movement in my hand. It was miraculous. So the shliach comes running to his house to give him the answer from the Rebbe, and turns out they called again Rabbi Binyamin Klein. It was 10 to 1 that the Rebbe called in Rabbi Klein. Mamish, the diuk otzum, to the time when the doctor said he felt all of a sudden something miraculously, something happened in his hand, and he regained a tingle. He regained the feeling to his hand. So the shliach says. Number one, the Rebbe says you will have a refuah shlema and yivasa tov. Number two, the Rebbe is giving you regards. And number three, the Rebbe would like you to check your tefillin. Do you have tefillin? You own a pair of tefillin? He says, yeah, sure, he owns a pair of tefillin. He got it as a gift by his bar mitzvah. Somewhere to find it. Where he got for bar mitzvah. He got a pair of tefillin. So they found the tefillin, and Rabbi Lazarov sends it to New York to a sofer, and the sofer opens it to check. It says, "Ukshartem lois al yodecha, your hand is missing." Well, I made sure that the doctor had a kosher pair of tefillin, and he had an absolute refuah shlema.
Wow.
So, and he said that this story became very famous in Houston. This was like the boom that started off as shlichus. He said then there was a bar mitzvah. There was a I forget the name, a rock star in the United States. He came to sing at the bar mitzvah, and he told at the bar mitzvah, it's a wealthy house. He told a story that he had a nest with the Rebbe. He suggested everyone should put on film, and this doctor got up and he told a story from the Rebbe. So this started off as shlichus. This is the story Rabbi Lazarov said. I'm telling the story firstly because we have the schus, the Baruch Hashem from Beis Menachem Mendel. There's a couple going on a shlichus, Houston, Texas. I'm telling the story because it's in the days that are close to Gimel Tammuz, but also connected to what we just learned. It used to be in the Klal Yisrael, if you had a burglary, so you check the alarm, you check the windows, you check the locks on the door. You check the cameras, the surveillance cameras, and so on. Now we're in a generation where it's a davar pashut. If a yid chas v'shalom has a difficulty in life, you check the film, you check the mezuzahs, you check to make sure that all the doors have a mezuzah, that the mezuzah are in the right place. It's a totally different outlook. This is Kimdumani among the many things that was revolutionized by Klal Yisrael through the Rebbe. The Rebbe saw the koyak of the Yid is not the locks, not the gates. True, it says, Chazal say that that's what Onkelos said, that the mezuzah, the marshal, that the king, that here the Melech Malach HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's instead of having his guard standing outside and he's safe inside, the Jews are inside and he watches them with the mezuzah outside. Okay, but it's a medrash chazal. It's a medrash chazal. It's Chazal tell us it's true. The Rebbe showed us how it's not just a Medish Chazal, but now it's in the consciousness of a Frum Yid that if he Rachmana litzlan has a difficult thing in his life, if there's a burglary, Chaz v'shalom, if his neighbor, even if he's not yet a Shem Torah mitzvahs, tell him, oh, you got to check the mezuzahs. You have to make sure you have the mezuzahs. If they check your tefillin, that to see mamish that the koyak of a yid is not a koyak gufni. It's a koyak ruchni. It's a koyak of the neshama. And to see that the pshutle, the Rebbe showed it to us, that the koyak, the yodecha, is not the gashmi's the hand. The koyak and the gashmi's the hand comes from the kashrus of a kosher pure tefillin that you put onto your hand. So now that we're standing in the days that are very close to Gimel Tammuz, definitely the tzaddikim give us a koyak. That the emphasis, every single yid has a neshama, which is like a tzur, is a rock. Every yid has a ace in the neshama, which is a rock. Like Rashi says, I'm even mistakel, bereshisam, betchilas shorashayim, vaniroyos, yusodim, vechazokim, titzuris, ugvos, halolu. That every yid and neshama is like a rock and like a mountain. You can't move it. The yid gets very stubborn. It's a am ksheyodah from al yusa. It's a nation of a stiff neck. And when it comes to doing the Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Almighty's will, you cannot move them from their place. And they're stubborn in it, and they will do it the Mesirus Nefesh. But there is the koyak of this neshama is unleashed and is revealed and is standing in the schus of the Ovas V'imos. And then it says that the truth is Ovas V'imos means every single Yid looks up. When we look up to generations of Yidden, to our own Ovas V'imos and their Ovas V'imos and their Ovas V'imos, back to the Ovas V'imos that all of us share, which is Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, and Sarah Imenu, Rivka Imenu, and Rachel Imenu, and Leah Imenu. We see the rock that's in us that we look at them. When we look at them, when we look at their Maisim Tovim and their Tzidkis and how strong they were, that they were strong like lions to do the Ratzon of Avinu Shebashamayim, their fineness, their goodness. So when we look at them, we know that we have it in us. Chaim l'chaim, the Yamim Asmuchim to Gimel Tammuz, that we should find, every one of us should find the Choyzek Sheba Neshama, the tzur, the rock that's in us, not to let the Goyim and the Goyishkeit, the Yitzhahara that likes to surround us, the Yitzhahara has to know that Bagoyim lo yischashav, we don't care what he says. And then the truth is that Heinom levodod yishkan, we're a nation that stands alone, and the Eibusher should help Taka that Kipshuta, that we should finally see the Vias Mashiach Tzidkenu, we should see Taka the way Uncle says. Uncle says that Ha'ama bilchudoi asidin the Yachsun Alma. That the bottom line is that the Yidden are the ones that are going to yarshin the entire world. The Yidden rock. Kipshuta. The Yidden rock. The Yidden rock. The Yidden are going to be bilchudoi asidin the Yachsun Alma. Alma, the ganze Welt. The ganze Welt. V'hoyam lochim avnayich. V'sarasayim and ikosayich. B'vias Mashiach Tzidkenu. So we should be zoiche that every one of us should see Taka al Yedea Ovos V'imos, that we should see the rock that's in our neshama, and we should see the mountains that are in neshama that are not movable, and we should see Taka B'Poel Mamish, and now the Bagola Dedam very soon, that we should see Ho Amma B'Chudoy Asi in the Yachsan Alma, that we're Yarshin the entire world, Hoyam Lochim Amnach Sarasem Menikosayach, the Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu, take you from Yad Mamish.
Amen, amen. Thank you. Rabbi, Shmuley and Mendy is your son-in-law, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here.
One more.
What?
What more can we do for this couple? They're going into Texas is almost going into lockdown because of this virus. It's like going to the lion's den. What more can we do for them? It says, well, angels placed them all right.
Maybe that's what Houston, Texas needs. They need another shliach from the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Wow.
Good. L'chaim.
Chaim,
They should
that
be matzliach in their shlichus, and every one of us should be matzliach in our shlichus. L'saken olam v'malchus shin daled yud.
Amen.